and climate readiness. I'm honored to be here today on the territory of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm joined virtually today by Ravi Parmar, Minister of Forests, David Campbell, Head of the River Forecast Centre, and Neal McLoughlin, Superintendent, Predictive Services, BC Wildfire Services. Today we'll be sharing our summer forecast for wildfire and drought. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the difficult situation that our friends and neighbours east of us are facing. The images coming out of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and Alberta are heartbreaking. Tens of thousands of people have been evacuated from their homes, and tragically, 2 people have lost their lives. We've deployed BC Wildfire Services personnel to help them in their fight, and I know that all of BC stands with them in this incredibly difficult time. It's clear that wildfire season is well underway in Western Canada, and that includes our province. Here in British Columbia, there are currently 10 evacuation orders in place, affecting approximately 120 households in the Peace River Regional District, Fort Nelson First Nation, and Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. There are also 5 evacuation alerts. This is an incredibly difficult time for people who have been evacuated from their homes or who are preparing to do so. The province is here to support you, and I want to thank everyone for following these orders and for being prepared to leave on short notice. The forecasts that have been shared with us today are going to give us a sense of what we can expect over the coming days and weeks, and we know that conditions can change rapidly. That's why we all need to be prepared, no matter where you live in BC. The province has been stepping up our preparedness efforts. Just last week, my ministry announced $7 million to support 139 emergency operations centres across British Columbia. These investments are about making sure communities have the tools and resources that they need to protect people, communities, and are just the latest in the long line of investments that we've made to increase our overall readiness. But preparedness doesn't stop at the provincial level. It starts at home. And that's why I'm asking everyone to have a plan in place now before there's an emergency. Now is the time to make sure you have your grab-and-go bag ready for you and your family, including any pets. Grab-and-go bags should include several days of food and water, include clothing, toiletries, and important medications. They should also include copies of your emergency plan and important documents, such as your homeowner's or renter's insurance. Home insurance is one of the best ways that you can protect your family after an emergency. Insurance that covers wildfire damage is widely available in BC. It often includes additional living expenses, which will support you if you need to evacuate. The province recognizes that not everyone has the resources to meet their needs, and sometimes people who are evacuated need a little extra help. For British Columbians who haven't yet registered for the BC Services Card app, I encourage you to do so today. With the Services Card app, you can create an emergency support services profile, which is particularly important for anyone living in areas prone to wildfires or other hazards like flooding. This will help make the process smoother should you have to evacuate and could help you access supports online instead of having to go in person to a reception centre. To create an ESS profile, go to ess.gov.bc.ca. Being told to evacuate is never easy. Our homes are our safe place where we feel the most secure, and it's important to know that when a local government or First Nation issues an evacuation order, it is always done as a last resort. These decisions are not made lightly, and they are made to save lives. I want to thank everyone for acting urgently and for leaving an area when an evacuation order is issued. Information on active evacuation alerts and orders throughout the province is available at emergencyinfobc.ca. It's also important to recognize that during this time of year, we could see changes in air quality due to wildfire smoke. To find active air quality warnings and what to do if there is a warning issued, visit aqwarnings.gov.bc.ca. Another climate hazard which is less visible but can impact people severely is drought. The frequency and severity of drought is increasing due to climate change. This puts pressure on our watersheds that are essential for food security and the well-being of our communities, industries, and ecosystems. Responding to and preparing for drought is a priority. We are starting early, working with our partners and investing in solutions to help British Columbians. Depending on how the summer unfolds, we may need to be more mindful of our water usage. By building water efficiency into our daily routines now, we can reduce the impact of drought later on in our communities. It starts with very simple tasks, including keeping a jug of water in your fridge to keep cool, instead of running the faucet to get cold water, or turning off the tap when you're brushing your teeth or washing dishes. This spring, we updated BC's drought and water scarcity response plan to provide clearer guidance ahead of the dry season. The updates focus on supporting local decision-making that supports communities and supplements their local emergency plans. The province also hosts seasonal hazard preparedness sessions with local governments and First Nations, where communities received an update on conditions and actions being planned and taken. Over the last several years, the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship has made significant investments in drought preparedness, including through the $100 million Watershed Security Fund. The steps that we take collectively, from staying informed and following fire bans, to monitoring our water usage and having an emergency plan. Together, we're making a real difference creating safer communities. We're committed to providing resources and support needed to help communities through these seasonal challenges. Thank you for doing your part to have a safe summer. I'd now like to turn it over to Minister Parmar.
Thanks very much, Kelly, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ravi Parmar, and I'm British Columbia's Minister of Forests and the Minister responsible for the BC Wildfire Service. I want to begin my remarks by acknowledging, as Minister Greene did, the challenging situation many of our fellow Canadians are facing as they battle wildfires in their provinces. In particular, the people of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and Alberta. My heart, British Columbians' hearts are with you during these very challenging times, in particular to those that are directly impacted and those that are on the front line, supporting and protecting communities. In the past few weeks, BC has stepped up for Team Canada and sent crews, equipment, and aviation resources east to help where we can. And we'll continue to be there for them while conditions in BC allow. Today, we have just over 100 wildland firefighters in the provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. We expect the majority of our people and resources will be back in BC in the next week. Back at home, many British Columbians are wondering what we have in store in the months ahead. We often look to June rains as an indicator of how severe our wildfire season will be. And although it's still early, models are showing that much of the province is trending towards warm and dry conditions. And so we may not get the precipitation we're hoping for. We'll hear more from our experts in the BC Wildfire Service about this later in the update. What I will say is the current conditions, on top of the ongoing drought and the overwintering fires in the northeast corner of British Columbia, is setting us up for an increase in wildfire activity over the next few weeks as we enter the core of the wildfire season. As always, the province is hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. And I encourage all British Columbians to do the same. It is essential, as Minister Greene said, that everyone in British Columbia, in every corner of our province, continue to remain vigilant and do what they can to prepare. Now is the time to ensure your personal emergency plans and other preparedness activities are done before summer arrives. Right now, there are more than 80 active fires around BC, with 3 wildfires of note: the Kittinyall River wildfire, the Pocket Knife Creek wildfire, and the Summit Lake wildfire. The Summit Lake wildfire, which is 100 kilometers west of Fort Nelson, is burning on both sides of Highway 97, and they are expected closures of the highway until Monday evening. The Pocket Knife Creek wildfire, which is 150 kilometers roughly south of Fort Nelson, has also impacted Highway 97, and Highway 97 closures will continue as a result of wildfire growth. The Kiskatinaw River wildfire, which is 65 kilometers south of Dawson Creek has grown in size and has crossed the border into Alberta, resulting in the closure of Highway 52. Structure protection, supported by aviation resources, are positioned in the community of Kelly Lake. Of the approximately 325 wildfires that have occurred in BC to date, we suspect that approximately 70% of them are to be human caused. The BC Wildfire Service has deployed equipment, aircraft, and crews to fight new fires and tackle overwintering fires as they resurface. I'd like to thank the hardworking BC Wildfire Service for all their work and dedication over the last number of weeks and months over the winter period as they prepare for this upcoming wildfire season, in particular the months ahead as we head into the core of the wildfire season. In particular, their actions during the recent fires around Fort Nelson and throughout the Northeast. I've been in regular contact with many of the local mayors in the Northeast, the Peace River Regional District Chair, local First Nations chiefs, and the MLAs that represent Peace River South and Peace River North. I want to thank them for their partnership and support as we head into this summer wildfire season. I want people to know that we're working hard every single day to prepare for this wildfire season. And we've been making proactive changes to ensure that we can best tackle the wildfires that will occur in our province. Our wildfire aviation contracts are in place. Ongoing training and use of night vision technology will help our crews work overnight, and enhanced respiratory gear will help keep them safe. We're also improving weather stations and camera networks around the province. I'm pleased to announce today that after a successful trial during the 2024 wildfire season, a new partnership between the BC Wildfire Service and UBC Okanagan is well underway. That will expand the use of wildfire cameras around the province. Once fully implemented, the program will help the BC Wildfire Service detect more wildfires quicker and help keep communities better informed and safe. I'll have more to share on this in the weeks ahead as we roll out this new initiative. As I conclude my remarks, I want to speak directly to all British Columbians. Summer is nearly here, and with it will come wildfires. It's been a tough season ahead for many communities here in BC. But know this, we will always have your back. Your role is to stay informed, prepared, and fire smart. Wildfire preparedness is a shared responsibility, and I urge everyone to take part in fire smart activities around their homes and throughout the summer. If you haven't already, download BC Wildfire app to stay up to date with current wildfire conditions and to report wildfires. Even if you think a wildfire has already been reported, new information, including photos, can help our crews plan. So if you see a wildfire this summer, you can report it on the app or dial star 5555 from a mobile device. It's important now more than ever that all of us continue to do our part to be safe and prepared. I want to thank everyone for the work that they're doing out there, in particular our wildland firefighters. Our experts from the River Forecast Centre and the BC Wildfire Service are here to dive into more details. And with that, I'm pleased to be able to introduce and turn it over to David Campbell from the River Forecast Centre.
Great. Thank you, Minister Parmar. So I'd like to start with a bit of an update in terms of seasonal river outlook and where we're at as we come into the summer season. So I'll start with the snow conditions. The River Forecast Centre released the June 1st snow bulletin earlier this morning. It really gives us a snapshot of where we're at in terms of provincial snowpack and water reserves within that snow. I'll take a bit of a snapshot back to April 1st, which is really the best survey for us to understand how we've come into the season in terms of stored water on the landscape. We did see in April 1st that below normal snowpack across the province, particularly in areas around west central BC and the Chilcotin and in the Central Coast. But generally across the province, we came into the season low. We've reached the peak of the snow accumulation around about the middle of April 14th, and have been subsequently melting that snow off as we go through. As of June 1st, we're seeing the continued trend of below normal snowpack with a provincial average of 44% of normal. What this really highlights when we look to the June survey is it gives us an idea of how the snow is melting, rather than how much water was stored to start the year off with. We've seen this year kind of mixed conditions in terms of we've gone through the season with periods of slower snow melt, and then periods of more rapid snow melt, particularly over the last week or so with the hot weather that we've seen. So as we come into the June 1st period, we're continuing to really see that below normal. We're a couple of weeks ahead in terms of that snow pack. We can look at this in terms of the automated weather stations. So this gives us a day-to-day snapshot across the province at a number of automated stations. And this is really just a time series as we go through. And when we get outside of the colored bands, outside of the greens in this graph, it's really when we start to see extreme conditions. So we can see this year has been tracking low in terms of that accumulation and that peak snowpack. And we've also seen that elevated snow melt over the past week or so here. So again, we're probably a couple of weeks early in terms of that melt. And we're seeing advanced snow melt. About 2/3 of the snow that we started with this year have now melted. On a normal year, we would have only melted about half of that. And this data snapshots back from last week, and even if we look over the weekend, we've obviously seen much more accelerated melt with that snow that is remaining. We're really getting into the advanced stages of the snow melt freshet at this point, with really at the managed or the monitored sites around the province that we really only have about a week or so left of snow. Obviously, at the higher elevations, that snow is going to continue to linger as we go through the month here. So this time of year, we're often what we'll call the freshet. We're often looking at the hazards related to that snowpack. The first one we're really focused on at this point in time is the flood hazard. Now, with the lower snowpack, we are seeing that for ongoing flood risk or hazard as we go through the next few weeks here. As discussed before, June is the wet season, particularly for the interior, and the time where we can get upper low systems that can deliver both normal amounts of rain that are beneficial, but we can also see extreme rainfall events happen during this period. So that's what we're continuing to watch for, particularly on the heels of this hot weather spell. We may see some some wet weather coming in later this week. I think generally it'll be positive, but we do need to continue to watch for those patterns that might emerge that provide extra to flood risk. In terms of the drought side of things, now we are seeing a setup this year for increased drought hazard as we go through the summer months. The lower snowpack that I've talked about, as well as that early snow melt with the water moving through the landscape early, that does put that water through the systems and less available as we go into the summer months. We've seen both short-term and long-term precipitation deficits. The short-term over the past few months, really since this calendar year, where regions of the province have been seeing below normal below normal precipitation that's showed up in the snowpack. We can also see that year on year, in particular areas in the northeast of the province where we've really seen a cumulative lack of rainfall over the last 1 to 2 years. And that's really been a key driver in terms of ongoing and persistent drought in those regions. We're also seeing forecasts for the summer of particularly the warmer season, really across the province and across the country, and also some areas with the potential for that increased dry spell. We can also look just from a climatological point of view. The summer, once we get into that July and August period, is the dry season. And so even at a typical time, we're not getting much rainfall in that period. As we go forward, weather is really going to continue to be the key driver for the drought side of things, and particularly that rainfall piece, but the temperature can be important as well, driving up increased evaporation and really driving drought levels up. So the province is assessing drought on a weekly basis this point in terms of drought levels. We're currently seeing those elevated levels, particularly in the northeast, with level 3 and 4 drought through the Fort Nelson, North Peace, and East Peace regions. But we're also starting to see emerging drought levels 1s and 2s across the province, Again, those areas that we started the season with less snow, areas where the snowpack is now gone, and areas where snow maybe plays less of a role, particularly areas in the coast, Vancouver Island, and the southwest. The weather spell we're going through right now is certainly adding to the evaporation, and we do expect to see, particularly in the short term, that we could see the increase in terms of conditions related to the drought. So we're continuing to monitor conditions around the province at the River Forecast Center here. We're releasing information that people can access to get up to date in current conditions. So gov.bc.ca/river forecast. And on the drought side, the drought portal is live with up-to-date information in terms of drought levels and provincial activities. And so with that, I will pass the baton over to Neal McLoughlin with the BC Wildfire Service. Thanks.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Neal McLoughlin. I'm the superintendent of predictive services and going to deliver your wildfire summer outlook for today's briefing. I'm joining you from the traditional territory of the Tk'emlúps peoples in Kamloops. So let's get into the outlook for the summer. And before I do, I'll say I wish I knew what the summer had in mind for wildfire, just as much as many of you out there. It's a tricky science, but I'm here to provide you with our best available intelligence and information sources that may give us some insight of what's to come this summer. And three of the factors that we look for when we think about a prolonged fire season are drought, and specifically drought that's carrying over from previous years, low snowpack like we've seen recently, and absence of spring rain. And I'm going to touch on each of these and how they're showing up throughout the province. But before I do, I think the key message I have is that we are seeing some of these factors, but not everywhere in the province. And so I think this fire season in particular will be busy in some regions and less so in others. And so let's dive into that in a little bit more detail. Let's start with drought. So we definitely held over some drought in parts of the province, specifically the central interior and the far northeast last fall. And this slide here is just comparing in the image on the far right. This is where we sit with our drought code as of the start of June. And we're comparing that against some recent years. And the total area burned in those fire seasons is noted below each of those slides. We can still see the presence of drought in many of the regions of the province. And so just picking out those shades of yellow and orange on the map on the far right, these are areas where our deep forest duff layers and our coarse woody debris material on the forest floor is very dry and will continue to be dry in the absence of large amounts of precipitation. And so we do have drought, but also note all of the blue on the map. There are regions that we did get good recovery, and that's due to the other two factors I'll speak about in a moment. But just take note, the whole province isn't yellow or orange. We do have some areas that are holding lower drought code values, which is great news for those regions. Let's look at snowpack. I won't spend much time on this one, but just kind of comparing last year on the left to this year at the start of April in terms of snowpack. We improved this year compared to years gone by in terms of our snowpack. Still wasn't above normal. We were really hoping for a really good snowpack year to recover those droughts, particularly in the far north, but it was better than years past. And so the shades of red, yellow, orange are indicating lower percentiles compared to history. And you'll note as we look to the map on the right, we're starting to see a little bit more green on the map, which is indicating we're getting close to normal levels of snowpack, but still a little bit below normal. So looking better in that regard. Let's talk about spring rain. And so in terms of May, we did see below normal precipitation anomalies. And so if we look to the map on the right of this slide, Where you see brown, that would indicate below normal precipitation. And then where you see white, we're about normal for precipitation. And where you get into the more green and blues, we're above normal. And so again, not everything's equal throughout the province, but really highlighting that far northeast corner and then reaching down into the central interior. We're still seeing absence of spring rain. Particularly for the northeast corner, that was also accompanied by above normal temperatures. And so just really helping to dry out the fuels this spring and set that corner of the province up for early season fire activity. Let's look at rain in one more way. This is over the past 90 days, and we really start to pick out those regions of concern. Again, areas that are showing up as brown on the map. These images, courtesy of our partners at Environment Climate Change Canada, are areas that we're closely monitoring and also experiencing fairly active fire behavior already this spring and heading into the summer. So we bring those three factors together throughout the province, and we can start to look at two different indices. One on the left is called our buildup index. This index represents the total amount of fuel in the forest that's available to burn. And on the right, we're looking at an anomaly with respect to our drought code. The drought code accounts for long-term drying, and it's an indicator, again, of the moisture content of our deep duff layers and large dead and down woody debris. And so these aren't the absolute values for these metrics. These are how anomalous the values are as of the start of June. And so this is where you can really start to pick up those patterns of concern throughout the province. Areas where you're starting to see yellow, oranges, and reds are anomalously high for this time of year, and are areas that in some cases we're already experiencing some fairly extreme fire behavior. But do note there are large portions of the province that are white, and that would indicate near normal conditions for this time of year, which is really good news. If we were to compare these anomaly graphs to years gone by, specifically the last two fire seasons that were quite active throughout all of the province, you would have seen much deeper shades of red throughout most of the province. So some good news for certain areas of the province. And then if we look to Haida Gwaii, they're even green. They're above normal. So we have seen, due to those three factors we just talked about, some recovery as we head into the summer fire season. But where you see those deeper shades of red, those regions may experience fire seasons similar to the past 2 years gone by as we head into the summer. Another way that we can gain insight in terms of expected fire activity is looking at area burn to date and how fire activity is showing up this season already. And so the map on the left is just showing you our 6 fire centers throughout the province. And then the bar graph on the right is color-coded, the same as the centers on the map. And what I'm showing you here is area burned expressed as a percentile of what you could consider normal conditions experienced over the last 50 years. There's 3 dotted lines going through this graph. They represent the 25th percentile on the bottom, the 50th percentile, or you could kind of consider that average year, in through the middle, and then the top line is the 75th percentile. And so if we're anywhere within that range of those 3 lines, we're kind of within the range of normality. As you can see, things are not equivalent as we look throughout the province. And so our Kamloops and Southeast fire centers are quite below normal. They're well below the 25th percentile. Our Coastal Fire Center is on par with having a fairly normal year. It's about average, just below the 50th percentile. Our Caribou Fire Center and our Northwest Fire Center are just edging towards that 75th percentile. So definitely watching those regions closely as we head into summer. But the real anomaly here is our Prince George Fire Center. Again, that northeast corner of the province. It is over the 97th percentile. Really, the only 2 years that can beat it right now are the last 2 fire seasons, 2023 and 2024. And so this graph, again, really just highlights that regionality to the fire season we can expect ahead. And so this kind of depicts those three areas of concern we might watch for as we head into summer, those being our Caribou Fire Center or the Central Interior, the Northwest Fire Center in regions where they're experiencing anomalous drought, and finally the Prince George Fire Center, which has been a fairly constant concern for us over the past 3 years. I thought I would just quickly show you what area burned is looking like in those 6 fire centers in terms of its absolute value, in terms of hectares, and that's the bar graph on the left. We were just looking at anomalies, but really the storyline for us right now with respect to fire is in that northeast corner, and that's that big bar, well over 330,000 hectares burned to date in the Prince George Fire Center. But I wanted to highlight something on the map on the right. Due to the extreme level of fire activity over the last 2 years, we've burnt close to 20% of the forested land base in our 2 farthest north zones, those being the Fort Nelson and Fort St. John regions. And that is depicted in the dark gray areas on the map on the right-hand side. The current year's fire activity is depicted in a bright orange color. And what I wanted to highlight here is even though we're still carrying very extreme drought levels and we've got those factors for a prolonged fire season in place, we have something that's also working against fire spread, and that is just the sheer area that's burnt already. You can really see that some of those current year fire perimeters are essentially trapped inside a matrix of fire disturbance from years gone by, and that will really restrict its further spread in some locations this summer. But there still is a lot of forest outside of those disturbance areas from the last 2 seasons that could still burn this year. So definitely that's our recurring storyline is concern for the far northeast in BC. Just looking at a couple other metrics before I wrap up in terms of why this season might be a little bit different than others. We've just had a look at our lightning activity. Through the graph here, there's a yellow line, and that's depicting the 20-year average in terms of lightning strikes, and that being over the spring months. We do expect lightning's going to pick up as we head into the core of the summer months, but we are tracking quite below normal for this time of year with respect to lightning. And for that reason, we haven't had as many new starts as we would otherwise expect in some regions of the province. But with lightning in mind, I did want to highlight, what we can expect as we head into summer. And so this graph is showing our current year-to-date fire activity in terms of number of fires we've experienced each week this fire season, and that's the dark black line running through this graph. In the background, I'm showing you historical percentiles for how many fires we might expect each week throughout the summer. And those are ranging from blue into red. As you get into the red color, you're kind of into the 90th percentile range. We've been kind of bouncing up and down, but fairly average this spring in terms of number of fires. But what I wanted to highlight is even in areas where we're experiencing maybe a more normal summer in terms of fire activity, regardless of the percentile you follow on that background graph, as we head into the summer months, we're going to pick up, we're going to see more fire. And it doesn't take a large fire like we've seen over the last 2 seasons to have impact. So I do really want to stress this is probably going to be the most active time of the fire season in terms of the next 2 months ahead. And you can see that on the graph depicted there. And so we can expect that we'll see more lightning in the months to come, more drying conditions that will allow more new starts to occur. And so being prepared for wildfire is something to keep in mind as we head into the summer, even when it's a more normal fire season in your region. Let's look at the outlook in terms of temperature and precipitation for June. On the left is our temperature outlook. It's been a long time since we've seen a temperature outlook with below normal conditions on it. I think this is like a trend we can expect going forward with respect to climate change. But again, looking to see warmer than normal temperatures throughout the month of June, already experiencing some of those warm temperatures this week. As we look to the map on the right, we are seeing areas of the province that are expecting below normal precipitation, those being the areas in brown. Otherwise, the white areas throughout the province could expect more normal levels of precipitation for this time of year. We are forecasting a low pressure system to come through parts of the province through the next week here, and that may bring some healthy amounts of rain to certain parts of the province. And so we welcome that. June wet rain can really set the tone for the remainder of the fire season. And so for areas that may experience healthy amounts of precipitation in the week to come here, again, that just really helps recover fuel moisture and lessen the fire danger as we head into the core of the summer months. As we look beyond June and we look into the summer outlook, again, that climate change signal really showing up for most of Canada. When the minister opened for us today, she mentioned the elevated fire activity across Canada, and certainly this temperature outlook doesn't look good for some of those prairie provinces experiencing extreme fire behavior this spring. But likewise for BC, looking to be a warmer than normal summer. Unfortunately, when we the key ingredient we're most interested in is precipitation right now. And the map on the right doesn't tell you how much precipitation to expect. Rather, what it's showing you is the skill of long-range precipitation forecasts. And so we don't tend to dive into those predictive outputs in particular because they have a very low predictive skill. And that's what you can see on that map on the right-hand side. It's just long-range precipitation is a real tricky one to get right. So we'll leave it with a warm summer ahead, and we hope that we see precipitation throughout the summer. But if we don't, in areas that are drier, those areas can expect increased fire danger and possibility of fire activity. I wanted to close by just speaking about restrictions and prohibitions throughout the province. So we have 3 levels of restricted activity. 1 is on campfires. That would be a Category 1 restriction. 2 is on kind of backyard burning, smaller piles. That would be Category 2. And the 3rd level is more landscape level burning, cut block burning. That's a Category 3 restriction. And so as we look to the table here, we do have Category 3 restrictions in all of our fire centers throughout the province. There are numerous Category 2 restrictions throughout the province, specifically Caribou, Coastal, and Prince George. And it's only our Prince George Fire Center right now that has campfire bans in some parts of the fire center. If you want to keep current on restrictions and prohibitions, this information is available on our public website, and you can find out information there. So I'd like to close here with a couple summary bullets. Spring rainfall and normal temperatures have alleviated the onset of a prolonged fire season in many regions of our province, and we're happy to see that. Long-range guidance favors a warmer than normal summer across much of BC, and that will start to dry things out. And also we can expect lightning to come as we head into summer. The likelihood of an active fire season is growing in regions of the province with persistent drought, including the southwestern interior, the Chilcotin, and the far northwest regions. But the Northeast is the region of greatest concern and will experience continued fire activity through the summer, given their multi-year drought conditions and presence of overwintering fires that have shown up this spring. The amount of rain required to mitigate the regions experiencing persistent drought is unlikely this summer. We would need upwards of 150 millimeters of rain over the next 3 weeks to really make a dent in some of those high drought levels I showed you earlier in the presentation. And so we'd be looking at, multiple days of 20 to 30 millimeters of rain, and we're just not seeing that in the outlook. And so we are experiencing some ongoing drought throughout the province, and in those areas we'll expect that fire activity will be its greatest. So I'll hand it back to our facilitator for the day. Thank you for listening to our briefing.
Thank you to David and Neal for your technical briefings. Much appreciated. And I'll turn it over to the moderator for questions.
Thank you, Minister. For media on the phone, if you have a question, please come off speakerphone or Bluetooth. take your phone off mute. You are not audible until your name is called. Then press *1 to enter the queue for a question and a follow-up. We are going to start with media on the room. We have one question here. Yasmin Granham, CTV.
Hi, yes. So my first question is for the BC Wildfire Service. Crews have been sent to Manitoba and Saskatchewan. So is there a concern with resource sharing and not having enough crews here in BC, as we know fires are ramping up and we are expecting a severe fire season as well?
I'll turn that over to our technical experts.
Minister Greene, if that's all right. I'm sure Rob can jump in as well. Hopefully you can hear me. Thanks very much for the question. Just at the outset, I think all British Columbians, certainly our thoughts are with those that are being impacted in those prairie provinces, as Neal touched on. Lots of dry weather, lots of challenging days in the past and many challenging days in ahead. I'm really proud that the BC Wildfire Service stepped up, as they always do, in providing that support. We have a strong partnership through a Canadian interagency that allows provinces to be able to ask for resources. And of course, the BC Wildfire Service, like other provinces, does its work internally to ensure that it's prepared to be able to provide resources. Over the last number of weeks, we've been able to provide resources, upwards of over 200 wildland firefighters. Equipment, aviation has made its way over to Manitoba and Saskatchewan in particular, as well as Ontario, to be able to provide that support. As I noted in my remarks, we have just over 100 wildland firefighters that are currently in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. We expect over the course of the next week, they'll be making their way back, and we'll continue to receive requests. But as has been noted in the presentation, we're headed towards the core of our wildfire season, and so we'll be looking to ensure that we've got our resources deployed where we need them, our wildland firefighters on the ground supporting our communities. And of course, if we need support, there's a partnership within the country. And of course, we also rely very heavily on our neighbors down south.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Just another question. I think it was really clear throughout the presentation that the Northeast is the area of concern when we're looking at what's happening right now, but also what's going to happen in the summer. What is the province doing to really ramp up efforts in that area of BC where we are kind of really concerned with what's to come?
I can briefly touch on the fact that preparedness is very much a team effort. And so the province is prepared to respond, but we are also asking people to be prepared. And that means getting your grab and go bag ready, making sure that your insurance is in order, that you have the things that you need as a household to respond as necessary. Registering in advance for your BC I want to get the name right, BC Services Card app, making sure you're registered there so that it's easier for you to access emergency supports should you need them if you're evacuated. I will turn this over to one of our technical experts in terms of response. I'll ask Kevin Dunbar. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And Rob and our colleagues at BC Wildfire can also add in here. Just again, as the minister mentioned, we can't encourage people enough to be as prepared as possible. So as the province, we will have emergency support services in place. So for those who are displaced, whether it's an evacuation order or an evacuation alert, we'll have support available for people impacted by that. And I know that can be incredibly disruptive for people's lives. So we really make sure that we have a really, really strong preparation for that. We're very close with local authorities and First Nations to make sure that people are staying as safe as possible. And I think the other really key message in addition to your preparedness and having your grab and go bag, listen to your local authority, listen to your local leadership when they're saying it's time to evacuate in terms of an order or an alert. And that's the quickest way that you can ensure that yourself and your family and those you care about remain safe. And Rob, if you have anything you'd like to add, I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. As the minister mentioned in his answer to the question around the out-of-province piece, we are prepared. We have crews deployed into the Northeast, aviation, heavy equipment, and our ground crews. working very closely with communities in the area, Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities and the partnerships that we have. And our structural protection and defense crews are also working to put on sprinklers and to assess homes to make sure that they're as defended as possible from these fires up in the Northeast. Just as a point of reference, as we've seen those other agencies across Canada come and help us in our time of need, as Minister said, it was our turn to help them. By deploying those crews here earlier in the season to help out our partner agencies, we've kept our limit to about 10% of our resources over our entire program that went back east to help those provinces and territories. So that remaining 90% is here in BC, and the majority of them are up in the Northeast, preparing and working to suppress those wildfires to the best of their ability in really challenging times.
Thank you, Rob.
Our next question is from the phones. Richard Zwesman, Global BC.
Neal alluded to this. Everybody wants to know how bad is it going to be this summer. What is the best sense about how people can compare where we're at now compared to some of our worst modern fire seasons? And what advice do you have to people who live in the fire regions about their own travel? As you know, there's a lot of nervousness this time of year about people leaving their homes before fire in worry that they will come back to nothing. Or what do you say to people, that live in this province who are planning on traveling around this summer? What should they be aware of for their travels?
It is an incredibly stressful moment as certain regions are facing significant risk. The best thing to do to reduce impacts to you and your household is to be prepared. And so while the province is prepared and standing by to act and acting, it is important for people to be personally prepared. So visit preparedbc.ca for information on how to be prepared, including grab-and-go kits and how to deal with different kinds of emergencies. In terms of travel and plans, our current evacuation alerts and orders are available online for people to take a look at, as well as any driving condition impacts such as road closures or other hazards are on Drive BC, so people can stay up to date on changing conditions there. Perhaps I will turn it over to Neal McLoughlin, who can help us out with some technical information.
Great question. I think I would highlight the three factors that I started the briefing with in terms of what people can watch for if they're concerned about how this fire season might compare to previous fire seasons. So again, that would be the presence of drought year after year. The second would be watching the snowpack and whether that's below normal. And the third would be absence of spring rain and just really hot, dry conditions as we head into summer. And so for regions of the province that are experiencing all three of those are a very strong indicator of a busy and prolonged fire season. But as I mentioned, that is not being experienced everywhere in the province of BC this year. And so for our members of the public and for people that work in our northeast corner of the province, 2025 will likely feel like a fire season from 2023 or 2024. It's going to be a very busy year again, but for other regions of the province, it'll be much slower.
Richard, did you have a follow-up?
I do, for Minister Greene, and it's unrelated, although connected to today. As you know, a number of years ago, some homeowners were kicked out of their homes on the Sunshine Coast because of unstable ground. They lost all their court challenges, and they were left with nothing. The homes are at risk of being valued at nothing, and they have received no government support or no relief. But when there's an event like a fire or a flood or another disaster, government ensures that these people are made whole. So what is the difference in a case like this? And I know you and I spoke recently about something similar in Chilliwack. Why is there such a discrepancy for people who have their properties impacted by different types of events like this?
For events that are eligible events for disaster financial assistance, there may be support. It's important for homeowners to be connected with their local government. Local government is the first line of defense for land instability. They're responsible for the planning, risk assessment, and zoning. And we are at the province supporting local governments in that work, keeping community safe, keeping community members safe, and helping with them with that work. And I'll also like to turn it over to Kevin Dunbar from Emergency Management and Climate Readiness.
And thanks for the question. I think one of the most important things to remember is in any emergency, our initial focus is on keeping people safe. And that's where a lot of the initial actions in a response is to make sure that public safety is paramount and front and center of all the decisions we made. And I understand and really empathize with people impacted by emergencies that are trying to rebuild their lives after. And that's where, as the minister said, where there is the response is eligible for disaster financial assistance, there is some of that supports, and as well as supports through local authorities as well. If there's any follow-up questions or specifics on this, happy to get more information directly to you offline. So thanks very much.
Our next question is from... Oh, do you have someone? Our next question is from Michelle Morton, CBC Vancouver.
Hi there. What can you tell us about the structures being impacted in Kelly Lake?
I will refer that over to BC Wildfire Service on structures impacted. Oh, or Kevin Dunbar from EMCR.
Perfect. I'm happy. So I think, again, one of the most important things here is we're trying to make sure that people are safe. So we have some information around structures impacted, but there hasn't been a full assessment done yet due to the ongoing wildfire risk in the area. But we have reports at the moment that there have been some structures lost, up to 7 structures lost, some of them being old derelict buildings, some mobile homes, etc. But again, a full assessment is underway. So in terms of specific information and up-to-date information would be with the local authority. And we're continuing to work very, very closely with them and BC Wildfire to make sure that we're on top of any impacts to individuals. Thank you.
Michelle, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. And so, of course, we understand the wildfires have closed the highway in both directions from Fort Nelson. What does this mean for things like food supply, access to medical appointments, and essentials for people in the area that have been cut off?
We'll go to Kevin from EMCR.
Perfect question. And I think this is one of the things that we do see impacted during wildfires is highways will be open and shut. And I know that Wildfire and Ministry of Transit are working really, really closely to try and keep Highway 97 open when it is safe. So I know earlier this morning it was open and it was then closed again. And so we're going to continue to see those sort of impacts. I think when we're seeing evacuation orders and alerts and people impacted, we are trying to work really closely to ensure that they've got access to services and the supports they need in the direction that they're able to evacuate. So if people have to go north, there's support up further north and south as well. And I think there will continue to be impacts to people's lives. Again, really, really empathize with that and try and make sure that we're keeping people as safe as possible and working with them to make sure they get that sort of support and working with the local authorities as well. Thank you.
Our next question is...
Thank you so much.
Our next question is Mark Page, Black Press Media.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I think earlier somebody said that there is, something around 70% of the current fires in BC are human caused, which sounds like a lot to me. I don't know if it's a lot, but is that a lot? If so, what does that tell you? Is there more action needed to, create some more rules? And how are these fires being started if they are human caused?
Thank you. I will turn this over to Neal McLoughlin.
Yeah, great question. Let me spend a moment just explaining how those statistics are calculated, because it can be a little bit misleading. So if you recall from my presentation, I showed kind of a week-to-week fire activity, and early in the spring we're pretty low, and then things pick up later in the summer. And so right now we're just expressing our human-caused fires versus lightning-caused fires as a relative percentage of the total. And so right now, because lightning really hasn't picked up yet, some of our alpine areas are still under snow. Lightning is a much less of a source of ignition this time of year. That will change, but it's all relative. And so you're going to see that percentage flip-flop as we head into July and August, and that's simply because we're going to see lightning pick up. But if you actually look at the absolute values, human-caused fires remain fairly constant month to month, week to week throughout the entire fire season. And one note on human-caused fires, that doesn't mean there are necessarily people out there deliberately citing fires. There's a lot of different mechanisms for how a human-caused fire can start, whether that be a vehicle, heavy equipment, rail line, a tree on a power line. All of those things qualify as a human-caused wildfire. And so, again, those remain fairly constant throughout the summer. But what happens is, as we head into lightning season through July and August, the relative proportion of lightning will far exceed the proportion of human-caused fires that are contributing. So expect that to flip-flop in the weeks to come.
Mark, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I'd like to ask this question first to Minister Parmar and then to Neal McLoughlin. Are you worried about this fire season?
Thanks, Mark. Absolutely. I think British Columbians certainly should be concerned every year with the impacts of wildfires, especially when we look to back east. But I want to reiterate to my message to all British Columbians is that in the BC Wildfire Service, we're ready. We've been working hard over the course of the last number of years to be able to prepare for this wildfire season. We've got over 1,300 wildland firefighters ready to go to be able to support and protect communities. But we know that we've got a role to play, but also British Columbians have a role to play. And Neal touched that on his remarks. It's so important that in communities that we are following prohibitions, following rules. I want to give a particular shout out to the Peace River Regional District. It's been a very challenging couple of weeks for that district, and they've done an excellent job communicating directly with their constituents over a very vast geographic area of land. But again, I want to reiterate that we are working hard each and every day to be prepared for this upcoming core of the wildfire season. We've got a role to play in the BC Wildfire Service. British Columbians do as well.
We have time for one more question, and that's gonna be from Gordon Hoekstra, Vancouver Sun.
Well, good afternoon. This is a question for the minister. With the situation with the residents in the Chilliwack River Valley, you pointed to local governments. Local governments tell me they don't have the resources to do this kind of thing on a long-term basis. And the province has helped out people in this very specific situations before, like in the district of North Vancouver. Why not find a way to help these people?
I know it's been an incredibly challenging time for the people who are impacted by a landslide risk. Our program doesn't have eligibility for properties where the structure has not been impacted. We're not able to compensate for damage or erosion to land. And I know that that's not the answer that those property owners were hoping for. We do continue to work with local governments, making sure that they have the support they need to make land use decisions in their local area.
Gordon, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I do. The federal government has made some changes to its disaster financial assistance program, which contemplates helping people in these kinds of situations when there isn't damage. Given that, and given that the federal government often gives provinces, including BC or the atmospheric river, billions of dollars to help people out, will that change like the provincial government's approach in these kinds of situations?
I'm always happy to work with the federal government in making sure that communities and people are being kept safe and are able to recover after any particular event like a flood or a wildfire. They have made changes to the program recently, and I look forward to working with the federal government to make sure that the funds from that program have the most impact in keeping communities safe and also in recovery.
We would like to apologize to media who didn't get a chance to ask their questions. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks everyone for joining and have a great afternoon.